Welcome everybody to the second roundtable discussion at the jam session at Free Lunch Studios here in Granby, Connecticut. We'll start with introductions. You can start, Mason.
I'm Mason, one of Matt's fellow students, and I've been with him since 2004 or 5. And we've become kind of like buddies, so I hang around. So that's why I come to these, because it's fun. So.
I'm Chris. Do some doodles. I met Roger a while ago. He just kept me around.
Hey, I'm Jake. I just finished a 4-day course here at the studio, and here I am.
I'm Mitzi, and I write stories for Matt, who never works on it.
Oh. My name's Matt Ryan. I'm co-owner of Free Lunch Studios and resident hack artist who doesn't work fast enough.
I'm Abby, and I've been taking classes here since Friday. Yeah.
I'm Elise, and I'm Matt's student. That's about it.
I'm David. I'm a novice writer. I have my first issue with a comic with Matt called Black Roses, and I've also taken the same graphic novel writing course as Jake.
And I'm Steve Canaris, your host and publisher of Free Lunch Comics. And for our topic tonight, and I'll just throw this out to everybody, we're going to be talking about our favorite and our favorite comic artists and artists in general. And so I just want to throw it out there, and you can talk about, you know, style, anything you guys want. Why don't you start off, man?
All right. Well, one of my favorites, I think, there's a handful, but if you go like with the originals, Will Eisner for certain, just for his layout and his inking, everything, storytelling, you name it. I think current day, probably Roberto Ramos. I am partial to the David, who did the art for the Skydal series. Did you see that?
I flipped it up.
Yeah. Geez, I can't think of it.
There's two artists, Barbara.
Yeah, and the gentleman's name, I forgot the guy's name. Starts with a B.
It's bad news. Well,
Yeah,
we'll try to remember for next week.
But the work is beautiful.
Gorgeous stuff.
Yes, gorgeous, definitely. You can definitely see the Disney influence, because they used to, you know, do some of the art for Disney, and you can definitely see it in the character design.
Absolutely.
The eyes, the faces, and the style is very Disney-esque, which I think adds to the.
Did you get the Dolls Factory issue?
Yeah. Yep. Second one.
Did you get the first one?
No.
It's all the pencil work from the book. It's
Yep.
just
It's very nice.
awesome. I would say if you look through it, you should get it. Heavy Metal.
I saw both of them.
Heavy Metal published the entire story in one issue. And I managed to pick that up and play with it for $2.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, so there's mine. Anybody else?
No, well, I just.
Matt Ryan.
Edit that out.
I'll start. As far as the Western artists, like you said, Will Eisner, I have a soft spot for Frank Miller, especially his Sin City works. Just that whole style, very interesting to me. I also like Bill Watterson doing Calvin and Hobbes. That was I grew up on that, so I have a soft spot for that kind of work. As far as going off, say for a Japanese influence, the author and artist of a series called Berserk, and Taro Miura.
Somebody else said yours right now.
And it's a bloody, violent series, but this guy goes to such great detailed lengths. He was able to draw part for part all the ropes, all the sails, like an 18th century frigate ship. The details were spectacular. When he's drawing like these suits of armor or these horrific creatures, he spares no expense to make sure that they look as amazingly detailed as possible.
That's cool.
What's it called again?
Berserk.
Berserk.
We've had different people mention that.
It's very much an adult series, but if you get the chance to see it, it is spectacular. It starts like any a person who starts out, it's going to be a little weak at first, but once you read more of it, you see his skills get better and better as you read it.
I think my introduction to comics, I think, is relatively new, or is kind of like reborn through my my introduction to Matt and working with Matt. I think my initial artist, the favorite is Masamune Shirow, who's the artist for Ghost in the Shell and Man-Machine Interface. The work is just beautiful work, and I think the story is rich as well. And probably somebody more recent, reading the Iron Man series that started when the first movie came out, and I like Salvador LaRocca's art is really nice. And I sought out some of his art with the new Universal series as well, and that was written by Warren Ellis. So those are just beautiful books, and I find I look toward, I actually, judge my choice of comics based on the artwork. I mean, it could be written by the most incredible writer, but if I'm not drawn into the work, the drawing, the penciling, the colors, yeah, I find it kind of put it down.
That brings up a good question. I'll throw it out to everybody. When you decide to read a book, is it the art that draws you in, that makes you more likely to buy it, or do you follow the writer, or is it the, maybe the cover, maybe the story, genre, thing like that? So,
I know from my experience with the Ignition City series that came out, that was written by Warren Ellis, and the artist is, I can't think of his name offhand, but I was not really very interested at all in the story, and the guys at Buried Under kind of convinced me to stick with it, because after the first or second issue I was like, because the art doesn't draw me into it. The story was beginning to develop, and they sort of convinced me to stick with the whole series, and I did, and the story ends up, there's something behind there, but the art I thought was, in my personal opinion, obviously it's all subjective, but it was very flat, and the colors were very flat, but I read it anyway. But yeah, I find for myself, I mean, like Warren Ellis wrote it, and I know he's done a lot of great things, but if the art doesn't draw me into it, the flow of the panels, I think is boring.
Now, Chris, I know you're a Mike Turner. Mike Turner.
I love Michael Turner.
Now, do you, obviously you're drawn to his work, or I don't know if you're collecting all of it now. Is there anything?
I'm trying.
Yeah.
What does he do? Like, I'm not familiar with.
I mean, he really got his breakthrough in Witchblade. He did Witchblade, and then he moved on to Fathom, and then he created a whole company called Aspen. And all those artists over there are completely amazing.
Yeah, I've seen some of the work in Witchblade. It's beautiful work.
Yeah.
There are other artists now that you kind of, is it the art or the writing that you're going for these days?
It's completely the art.
It is.
Like at this point, I'm over the fact where the cover artist might not be the inside artist. Okay. Those comics I get are Michael Turner covers, but earlier when I would buy a comic book, it'd be looking at the cover, and then I get it, open it up, and it'd be a different artist, and I'd get pissed, But yeah, Joe Mad is another one. He just had his game come out, and I've been waiting for that forever. Just one of my favorite artists to develop something else other than just a comic book. So I still gotta check that out. Dark Saturday's game.
Cool. Now, Abby, you're a Batman fan? Did you get the Batman comics? Not yet. Okay.
I can lend you some.
Okay.
So Mason,
Yeah.
art, story, character?
Well, I'm not keeping track of comics like as much as I used to back then. But I mean, if there's something that draws me in, it's like nowadays the story. Like I mean, I don't religiously follow anything anymore. I mean, if I like stick to like a certain series like that I've stuck with all my comic book life, then I'll stick to it. But if it goes down a totally like different path, then I'll just stop reading it. But if it's like something that doesn't like last forever, like if like the writer just like gets off and does other things and then goes on to an artist, I'm fine with that. I can consider that like an end of like the whole story.